Adobe Acrobat Studio, so brand new. Show me all the things PDFs can do.
Do your work with ease and speed.
PDF Spaces is all you need.
Do hours of research in an instant
With key insights from an AI assistant.
Pick a template with a click.
Now your prezzo looks super slick.
Close that deal? Yeah, you won.
Do that, doing that, did that, done. Now you can do that with Acrobat. Now you can do that
with the all-new Acrobat. It's time to do your best work with the all-new Adobe Acrobat Studio.
This is Charlie. Half of his breakfast always ends up on the floor. And he leaves fur everywhere. That's why I grabbed the Bissell Power Clean Fur Finder. It's cordless, powerful, and actually finds fur you don't even see. Learn more at Bissell.com.
Hello, family. I'm Janaya Future Khan, and this is Dark Woke. Just before we hit it, I want to say thank you to all the listeners out there, and a special shout out to the supporters who make this show possible. It truly means the world to me. If you'd like to become a member, our Patreon is linked in the episode right up below. Hello, family. Because we're going to be talking about Nick Fuentes and Piers Morgan today. So, Piers hosted Nick Fuentes, perhaps the most well-known little boy Nazi in America. He's like the little drummer boy, except the drumsticks are like just broken up swastikas, right? That's that guy. There's some shit that we need to unpack related to him, because as much as mockery is important, okay, understanding the appeal is equally important. So before we get into it, because I got to tell you, it was as explosive as you can imagine, right? You saw the tensions between Piers and Tucker Carlson, right? Tucker Carlson also had Nick Fuentes on his show. If that one made any sense at all, we would have gone over it. So there's clearly this thing that's swirling around here, right? We're going to talk a bit more about that. So before we do, I said we need to cleanse the palate. We're getting into some of the, we got to cleanse the palate, okay? Get this. Organizers in Missouri, okay? As you know, the GOP and the Trump administration are working tirelessly to steal not only the election that's upcoming, right? We're talking 2028. They want to make sure that there isn't one. And if there is going to be one, they want to rig it in their favor. They've also been trying to steal elections all over the country, ensuring, the right midterm candidates win on their side. And they've been doing that through gerrymandering, which we really need a new name for. It's like Knickerbocker. It doesn't sound bad, but they're redrawing all the maps, right? All the congressional maps to skew them in their favor, which is something that they have done for decades, right? Occasionally the Democrats do it as well. We saw it here in with Newsom in California, but a lot of that was a strategy against their attempts, the GOP's attempts to steal and rig elections. So what happened in Missouri? Okay, people, not politicians, amassed 300,000 signatures and presented it to the Secretary of State's office, right? That's nearly triple the number required. And guess what happened? Guess what happened? That Missouri map. Well, the one that the GOP wants, it's now been blocked. It's been blocked. That map is not going into effect, and it is going to force a referendum on the map next year. So congrats to them and to us. When we fight, we win. That's it. When we fight, we win, babies. And my God, did we need that palate cleanser? Because the things that I'm about to tell, what I saw today, okay, Glenn Beck, do you remember that loser? Okay. This guy, seriously, like he did this in a serious way, okay? This is the guy who got ousted from Fox News. This was the Tucker Carlson before Tucker Carlson. And in fact, Glenn Beck was ousted largely in part by the tireless work of people at Color of Change, which is what led me to go to Color of Change. I was like, oh, we're winning somewhere. they had they had the ads strategy, right? So they targeted the advertisers that were all over Glenn Beck's show. And guess who got ousted for that, right? I mean, there's a myriad of other reasons, I'm sure. But when it comes to the money, though, that's the one thing that's not forgivable for these corporations. You don't fuck with their money. And he's starting to fuck with their money. So unlike Tucker Carlson, Glenn Beck simply lacks the stupid hair. His hair's not stupid enough. He's not hysterical enough, I suppose, because he's kind of been on the margins. So what's Glenn doing to stay in the zone, right? Break through his new contemporaries of fucking weirdo loser dweebs. This guy makes an AI generated George Washington. But not only does he make an AI generated George Washington, okay? He gave him biceps. Like, this guy is in a black t-shirt like that Joe Rogan would wear or Elon Musk would wear, and he's got like soft, flabby biceps, you know? And Glenn is talking to him as if he's a serious person. It's not even good AI. What I'm saying is we're not making fun of these people enough. This is the line that I'm really going to try to figure out, right? To what extent do we just keep mocking these fucking dweebs? And to what extent do we take serious the threat that they represent? That's the line we have to draw, because in mocking, which I am a huge proponent of, I think it's a grand old plan to marginalize weirdo bigots, right? Just like go back into the underbellies, right, of America. That's not really how this works, right? And this is a new 21st century problem of Nazis in the mainstream. But the way that we've been approaching it is dated and annoying me, right? We keep going for the gotcha. And we gotta get past the gotcha. I mean, yesterday we talked all about accelerationism. All of these people that have been named in this episode and the one before that and the one before that are all part and parcel with accelerationism. Sam Altman, my OpenAI guy, was on Jimmy Kimmel, right? He's telling Jimmy he can't raise his kid without Chat GPT. He's got to ask him everything. Why is my toddler taking pizza and slapping it on the floor? Nigga, why is he? That's the question. What are you doing? That's not sanitary. What are you doing? It reminded me of this. There's this Onion headline, and it said something like, guys who suck at being a person loves AI. It's just kind of reminded me of that. Can you hear the forced laughter? Because you're going to hear some stuff. You're going to hear some stuff, but it's important that we do. And it's also not as bad as you think. It's because it's stupid. Because racism and misogyny, these things, they're illogical and they're stupid. But what got exposed in this interview isn't what Nick wanted to expose. And I don't think it's what Piers thought that he would expose. It was a really irritating, troll versus, conservative weird dude. But that's just the time that we live in. So why don't we pull up the clips on, you know what? Why don't we start with the best part? Why don't we start with Hitler, actually? Right? Everybody thank Corey in advance, because there's a lot of clips and we both had to sit there and listen to it. Then he had to listen to me bemoan the fact that I had to organize these things, even though it's all politically incoherent. And that's the whole point of bigotry. It's not supposed to make sense because it doesn't make sense. And then they bend over backwards to try to make it make sense. In the meantime, have any of you watched Heated Rivalry? I got to tell you, I like that show. Have you watched Heated Rivalry? I'm just going to say, as a sports fan, I like the gay sex. I'm just saying, as a sports fan, they do it really well. Hockey anchors the gay you will see a butt like you have never seen before in your life on this one man. This is a butt. There's before butt and there's after butt. No butts in between. This is the best butt on the internet. Unless we want to go through a butt off, which I'm okay with. I actually am a huge proponent of that. Huge. So yeah, we're going to hear Nick Fuentes' thoughts on Hitler. We're going to hear his thoughts on women. We're going to hear his thoughts on black people, which the blacks. But in that's what we could call the blacks. But in that, there's so many things that are exposed. But right before we pop in, I do want to remind you of something, because it is so easy to dismiss this guy and the bullshit that he's saying. It really is. I have been talking endlessly about Nick Fuentes for the better part of 2 years, not because I think he's good at what he does. It's because I think he's very good at what he does, which is he's a fucking troll. That's it. This is a kid that started out at 18 and has been on the internet ever since. And he's been saying the same things ever since, but it's a massive contradictions. You can't negotiate with what is illogical. It makes you physically ill to do so. And what keeps happening is our mainstream media, of which I would include Tucker, at this point, of which I would include Piers Morgan at this point, right? They keep, well, not Tucker, actually. Let me go with like non-deranged, non-full-on white nationalist mainstream media. Let me just be clear, actually. Every time one of these guys comes on, there's like this gotcha that they're waiting for, right? And you're going to hear in this clip the tensions around that and why it just doesn't work. And I need us to really understand that it doesn't work. Why did I believe that Nick Fuentes was a problem? Because he comes across as someone who will just say the fucking things that everybody else is too afraid to say. And we have gone through 5 years or so of cringe on the internet, satire. And right now, in a time where we're getting bottle-fed fucking AI slop, right? Where the algorithms are just shoving randomness down our throats, right? People are desperate for sincerity, desperate for something that feels authentic and real. For all that, MAGA and all those folks who voted for Donald Trump and thought they were going to have this amazing new time, they're not like, I made a mistake. My whole belief system is it's in question. No. They're not thinking that. They're like, oh, we need somebody else. When Charlie Kirk transitioned into a Capri Sun, there was a void that was left. And the way that Kirk handled Israel was very much at odds with the majority of his base. Turning Point has not been able to recalibrate since Kirk. So where did those guys go? They went to Nick. And since all of this has been happening in the past year, I've seen Nick get plugs on CNN, New York Times profiles, and the Rolling Stone. It's almost like media can't get enough of him. So the question that I want you to think of too, while we're going over this, this overarching question is platforming a bigot? Is that a thing anymore? Right? I don't know that it is in this new media landscape, because their platforms are growing at such unprecedented scale because of accelerationism. But that's neither here nor there. For now, we're going to lock in on Nick, and I'm going to demonstrate all the ways that we're going to break down. Like, it's so easy to win. It's so fucking easy to win, because for all that they yap about how much they don't care about anything, they kind of do. But let me let them cook.
jokes, although I haven't ascertained yet whether you are joking when you say that Hitler was very fucking cool. Are you joking, or do you actually think he was very fucking cool? The most genocidal monster of the last 150 years.
Yeah, the thing is, my generation, we're just done with the pearl clutching. You know,
yeah, you might be, but then your generation hasn't gone through what Danny Finkelstein's family went through. So maybe the pearl clutching has a way to go for families whose family members
were murdered. Yeah, we got all that. We, you know, me mom, like we're, you know, I don't even know who this person is. Why is this person talking to me? This old British guy is saying me mom got killed by Hitler.
Because he doesn't find it funny when you say Hitler's very fucking cool.
I don't care. I don't care.
I know you don't care. That's fine. You don't have to care. But he does care.
Does that guy care about America? Does that guy care about me and my country and my family? No.
Why didn't Piers Morgan say right there, 418,000 Americans were killed in trying to end Hitler's war against disabled people, Jewish people, LGBTQ people, all of Europe, right? All these fucking plans of his. Oh, he's fucking cool. Why wasn't that contradiction named, right? Anyway.
He cares what you, a prominent conservative in America, has to say about Adolf Hitler. And what do you mean by Hitler is very fucking cool? Because I think he's very fucking a monster.
Okay.
That's recording. Yeah.
And that's a clip. I think he's very fucking a monster. Do you hear yourself?
Yeah,
I mean, can we all grow up?
I do.
Can we all grow up?
He murdered 12 million people. He murdered 12 million people. What is very fucking cool about that? Tell me.
The edits, it's just cool. The uniforms, the parades, it's cool as a guy. You look at World War II and it's fascinating and it's interesting and it's compelling and it's cool. And, you know, we're just tired of saying these kinds of things. We want to talk like real people and give our honest opinions. And then we literally get an old Jewish guy from England who's going to say, oh, that's not very funny, mate. Me mom. And it's like, shut up. Like, you know, no one is in favor of genocide. So let's just get that out of the way. We're not in favor of a Holocaust or genocide.
Do you think if half your family you think if half your family had been wiped out by very fucking cool Hitler, you'd still think he was very fucking cool? Or would you think that actually he was a despicable monster who murdered 12 million people, who targeted people because they were disabled or Jewish or Romani Gypsy or whatever it may be, and that he systematically destroyed people, incinerated them in gas chambers? Do you think that you would find it very fucking cool if your family had been through that? Or do you think you would find it very fucking disgusting? And perhaps moderate the number of times you laugh about it or want to joke about it or want to abuse someone like Danny Finkelstein, who's written incredibly powerful books about what happened to his extended family at the hands of the Nazis and your other hero, Stalin. See, my point to you, Nick Fuentes, is that in parts of this interview, you try to come across as moderate, but every now and again, the mask slips, and it's slipped again here with what you say about Hitler. There's nothing very fucking cool about Hitler. We know that from history now.
For those who are not watching, the entire time that Piers Morgan spoke, Nick is just laughing. It's kind of ridiculous to him. He's like, it's not about the genocide, man. It's about the lore. It's about the art. But put the contradictions on display, right? His rebuke to, well, you know, your family hasn't been wiped out. And what about this guy? And he goes, I don't care about this old Jewish guy. Does he care about me? Does he care about America? You say that you care about America, right? Then we've got to start absorbing the arguments instead of seeking the gotcha. That's ultimately it. We're not winning, right? And I think, you know, the point is to demonstrate the absurdity. But that's not what's happening here, right? Who is in control depends on who is watching. That's where we're at right now. And for those of us who make fucking sense, you're going to be aligned with Piers Morgan, even though we might not agree with anything else. But for those who don't, but it's what are the dynamics? That's what is more insidious. And that's what we have to pay attention to. The language that's being used is really about gotcha. It's about shame. It's about you should know better. This is despicable. The language that actually should have been used wasn't that. It wasn't, we should, like, this offends my sensibilities. The whole point of troll culture is outrage. That's what they want. They feed off of it. It's parasitic, right? It's why the entire right, despite the fact that they have a full fucking sweep, despite the fact that they have all of Congress, they have the House, they have Senate, they have the Supreme Court, they have the president and the administration, right? They have all the money, an incomprehensible amount of money. And all they can do is talk about anything that we do and how we respond to things and what we are and what we think, right? And how we identify. That's literally it. And so if you're going to put somebody on your show, please have a better strategy than this, right? Really make them own their contradictions rather than try to seek the shame. We just got a litany of what Hitler did. That's exactly what Nick Fuentes wants. See, look how hysterical this guy is. I don't care about this. You're just old. You don't get it. You don't get it. And he's like, no, like this is about, this is a despicable man. And it really depends. Because, I like to say who's winning and who's losing. In this case, what makes it so dangerous is it really depends on what belief system you came in watching this with. But, I'm a little ahead of the curve in terms of, the clips that are coming. So I'm going to shush, but I want you to think about the fact that it didn't come up at all. That it's like, why would you celebrate this guy? Nick Fuentes has even gone against MAGA, right? He's gone against Trump to say, I'm America first. I'm the only person that's America first. I care only about Americans and this and that. Then why would you celebrate a guy who's responsible for killing 418,000 American men? Where's that? And it's not that would win, right? But my God, you'd win that fucking point. Because ultimately, it's not about how could you, this moral outrage. It's about finding the gaps and making them explain more thoroughly, and this is going to be a recurring theme because, we're about to cook, right? Making them explain their positions because we too often get caught up in it. But I'm going to we'll ride this one out because I want you to really see. Nick goes off online after this interview and says, I don't know why Piers is talking like he won. I won. And Piers is like, how could you possibly think that? And, they call it groypers, right? That's Nick Fuentes' followers. Honestly, just incel dweebs. They're weenies. I don't know how else to describe them. But there's the folks who need chaos. But as we go on, so once you get through this clip, more and more about Fuentes will be revealed. And that's where we can really start cooking. But anyway, go on.
Already conceded that he murdered at least 6 million Jews. So when you say he's very fucking cool, Jewish people watch this and go, this guy's disgusting. Why would he say this about someone who perpetrated such an evil? And what's the real answer? Why do you? Is it just for clicks? Is it for money? Is it just for fun? For shits and giggles? What is it? What motivates you to say something like Hitler was very fucking cool?
It's for this. It's for all of this. And the
exactly.
Awareness is amazing. You're a boomer. You're a 60-year-old boomer, and we've spent maybe 3 minutes on you saying he's a really fucking monster. He incinerated people. And I'm sitting here saying it's not that serious. It's not that deep. And
not that
what
serious.
I'm getting at.
Not that serious.
Do you want to say more about?
Well, you're not
he's
a kid.
A monster
You're not a kid yourself anymore. You're not a teenager.
I know.
Right? You're nearly 30. To be clear,
yeah,
okay? You're a fully formed adult who has a brain, right? And at some stage, that brain is taking you off these rabbit warrens.
Is this an interview or is this a lecture? Can I respond to what you're saying?
That, you see, you know what this is? This is the deplorable strategy. They're deplorable. And what happened? They said, yeah, we're deplorable. We're so bad. And then they started to like identify as that because they feed off of it. What did Nick just say? Why would you do this? For this, I do it for this. And to be frank, I heard the earlier parts of the conversation. Nick Fuentes absolutely was trying to mitigate some of his more extreme positions. But, of course, he's never going to go so far, at least in this stage, to completely betray the things he actually believes. So if he's asked point blank, period, what is it that you think about Black people, about women? He has no choice but to commit to things that he said. So this was the most irritating one, but was also the interaction, but was also one of the most honest. It was Nick was like, I did this for me. And it's true. He's like, are you lecturing me? This is what anti-intellectualism looks like. And that's part of the accelerationist strategy, right? Because the people who are drawn to Nick love that shit. They don't want to be lectured at. Because lecturing is learning, and that's what old people do. For the record, I will say, I know that boomers have taken some shots, and I'm like, for the most part, the rich ones, they're fine. They're fine. They got the means to get through it. But I truly have never heard such a venom-laced use of the word boomer. Like the way Nick said it was legit a slur. And kudos to Piers for being like, nigga, you not that young. You are not that young. You are not that young, So he got his little back, but let's just keep him going. Okay. I'm curious. I almost want to put, you know what? I got it. Corey, forgive. I want to do a little rearrangement. Can we pull up the clip of Nick with his father, speaking on his father? Because I was going to save this, okay? But this isn't the primary point of my argument. The argument that I will be making is how we should be debating these folks. But I'm going to put this up because I need you and I need us to hear that this is just bullshit. I don't care. Nothing matters. Who cares what you think? Who cares what I think? Who cares about anything, right? And that's what they use because they don't care about our shit. Because we're like, you should care about this. And he said, no, I shouldn't. And he's correct, actually, right? If that's how we're approaching it, instead of demonstrating the idiocy and also putting the burden of proof on them. But that argument will come later. For now, I want to put this in a new light because what has Nick said over and over again, right? I don't care. You take things too seriously, right? You're talking about this and that. Why don't we hear what happens when it's something Nick cares about? Which, by the way, over and over again, he yaps like he doesn't give a shit about anything.
Everyone's a product of their environment. And I was reading some stuff about you in the last few days. There was an episode of your podcast where you talked about your father, Bill Fuentes, and how he wouldn't take the family, including you, to certain restaurants because he believed they were associated with African Americans. We would be deciding where to go to eat, you said. What are we going to do for dinner tonight? It was a running joke. Me and my sister would say Applebee's, and my dad would say we would never eat at Applebee's. Not in a million years should you be caught dead, Fuentes said about Applebee's. Go to a different restaurant, a local restaurant. No Applebee's, no Red Lobster. That is commonly known as black fare. And you also shared another story about your family and restaurants. Said before me and my sister were born, my family had a saying about Olive Garden that contains the N-word that we're not allowed to say. So my question, based on that anecdote that you say on your own podcast, is do you think you grew up in a racist environment, that your father was inherently racist, and that thought process moved to you?
Well, I would say it's a new low. I've been attacked for being a racist many times, but to attack my father, to attack my parents.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that fucking interesting? Attack? Ooh, what a little snowflake. What a glass jaw. Right? What a glass fucking jaw. A question was asked. And that's a new low. Is it? Is it? I didn't know there was a low, right? And do you see what I'm saying? It's all bullshit, right? But put that in your back fucking pocket, because I promise you, once we find, as soon as we get the fuck out of our own way with like, you should be ashamed of yourself, right? Once we get out of our way with that, then we start collecting receipts. We start making arguments, start making cases. But this is a debate strategy that I'm going to be introducing here. We've talked about it before around burden of proof and how we keep getting trapped. I wanted you, we'll play out the rest of the clip because it gets worse, to really see though that it's a ruse. It is so important to remember that, because 98% of what this guy puts out, he's in control of, right? Do you know how long his fucking episodes are? I mean, I try to capitalize on the same thing when it comes to this government. I'm like, you're not combing through my shit. You're not really gonna pay too much attention. You'd have to find this an episode. So he's never really been put under duress before. He's never, because people are so drawn to his outrageous commentary, his so-called racist, homophobic, and it's like it's not even so-called. It is. I'm saying so-called because it's all just a fucking rude. Like this, I didn't know that Nick Fuentes was as big a grifter as he is. I genuinely was like, for a while, thought, this guy really believes what he says. But then why were you walking it back on Piers Morgan on the earlier side? Why would you want to appeal to the mainstream? Right? Because ultimately, that's the place that they all want to get to. That's the place that they all want to get to. It's where Candace wants to go. It's, to be perfectly frank, accelerationism. It's also where Hassan Piker wants to go. And that's the thing, right? We don't get to decide everyone that goes. My job, your job, our job is to figure out and uplift who the fuck those people should be. And the job of those people is to make our shit so well known and get so goddamn good at it that we make ourselves obvious to y'all because you're busy. This shit? Oh, he struck a nerve. Keep it up.
Anecdotes, I would say that's sort of a new low.
Hang on, it's your anecdote.
Yeah, but he's not here to defend himself.
You are.
And my parents are.
You told the story.
And I will. And I'm
not trying to ambush you. As I said at the start, Nick, to be clear.
No, it's not an ambush.
Nick, to be clear,
I think
I'm not
understands.
ambushing you. I'm literally reading an anecdote that you revealed on your podcast. It's you that's put it in the public domain.
100%. So I want us to remember that, right? Like, it's not gotcha, right? You want to know who got? We did. By we, I don't mean you cuties. I mean, though, the public, I mean, even folks like Piers Morgan, all the way to, those of us mainstream media, or, those of us who are on the left of some kind, liberal, whatever, right? Anybody who participates in the gotcha. Because I'll tell you something the right doesn't, because they don't generate anything. As much as I think it's the wrong strategy, what matters though is that there was a response, right? You can edit and adjust a response. The problem with our responses they've largely been liberal, white, or an outrage, which is another white thing, right? Too many, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But this whole nothing matters, I don't care. It's only when it comes to our shit. You start putting them on the back foot. You start finding out where those pressure points are, because I'm going to tell you something. They've not been under that kind of pressure before. Like, don't get me wrong, used to being hated, but they like that. They like that. But what happens when you embrace a troll? Right? They get their little fucking jewels on the belly and their hair, and then they start turning all cute and weird looking. We don't know. And I'm not talking about embrace like hug, y'all. I mean, embrace like move past the outrage, move past the how could you? And actually start to interrogate what it is that they believe or don't believe. Now, you want to hear some shit? Another, this is fucking fantastic. I want to demonstrate for you more of the weeniness, okay? Why don't we play the clip, the longer one on, you know what? Yeah, we'll do the longer clip. There's two clips on Nick Fuentes' position on women. And by the way, I think a reference to racism is brought up. It already got brought up. Like, yeah, this guy loves racism. He's a huge fan of racism and expects that somebody like me is going to lose my shit, get outraged. I mean, I was telling Corey this. It was one of the weirdest, funniest moments. First time I went to a mic out in NoHo, North Hollywood. As soon as I get out of the car, I'm with my friend Shaq. She's also black. We get out of the car. It's the middle of the night. Not like super late. I mean, like, 7, 8, mic time, right? Comedy clubs across the street. So I walk around the car. We're waiting across the road. And as this car is whipping by, it goes, I hear, nigger. And Shaq and I just, we just fucking burst out laughing. The absurdity of it, right? At a certain point, you go through this enough, right? That the racism that matters most to you is the systemic kind. Because we can build the communities and the people we want around us, and they affirm and they believe differently. But white people don't operate that way. And when I say white, I'm talking about liberals, right? They don't operate that way. It's really about, hey, I'm going to show you what I think. I'm a good person. I'm against this. And for the record, I'm not saying don't be against racism, okay? What I'm saying is that we're not being really honest about what the compulsion is on virtue signaling and how that's actually helping and informing this, and how social media and the algos have really capitalized on that. It's the same thing I've been arguing with, the word retard, okay? It's not because I'm a huge proponent of the word. It's that I'm in comedy clubs. I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. The word's here. And rather than just do what we've been doing, which is, you can't say that word. You can't say that word. That word is bad. We didn't do anything when Section 504 was gutted. There was no movement outside because people were like, I did my work. I said it was bad. And I'll go and you know what? I'm going to yell at anybody who says it online. Yeah, because you like what it says about you. The actual work is different. And if we remove the outrage, it works in two ways. If we stop being so reactive, there's a difference between being reactive and reactionary. Reactive is the bad one. I like to remember by thinking of like nuclear reaction, right? Reactive is the bad one. That means we're playing into the hand. So if we stop, it works twofold. One, we stop feeding the gremlins that require and demand our constant outrage. And if you look at who's most outraged, they don't really look like me. So that's number one. And number two, so we have an incentive already, 50%. The other 50% is in removing this like very flimsy sense of self, right? Of the work, right? I did the work because I told someone they couldn't say that. If we remove it as like the knee-jerk reaction, as the accepted one, if we remove the outrage, and actually it came down to what work you do, like actual work, we might see some shifts. We might see some real shifts if enough of us start to focus on what actually matters. And it's not because these things don't matter. It's whether or not they matter the most, right? It's whether or not the strategy is working, and it's not working. The strategy where we just try to police people's language. When you say police people's language, who do you think in your mind when I say that? Exactly. But then we started doing it too. But it was, well, that's not the pronouns and the this and the that. And it's like, okay, All right. I'm getting too off the board right now. I could feel it. So I'm going to reel it back in, but I'll just say this, okay? Let me just say this. Indulge me here because I go back into the linear path, but just indulge me because I've been thinking about it. Because I said, I remember saying a couple weeks ago, about trans folks, because they were turned into a lightning rod, and really attacked. That is objectively true, right? Our response was not great. The need for attention and the constant, but what I found interesting was like, at first it was, what's happening to us? We're the canaries in the mine. We're the canaries in the mine. And as if things hadn't been happening, like that this was inevitable the second that we lost abortion rights, because it wasn't about abortion. It was about body autonomy, but we don't give a fuck about women, right? Because in America, it's everybody's the unique one. And my oppression is unique. But then I was thinking about that, right? Oh, my oppression is unique. And you need to care about what happens to trans people. But then we say we're only 1 or 3% of 1% of the population. It's actually closer to 3, but let's, you're worried about the wrong 1%. And here's my question. Then why the fuck would we ever center a movement on 1% of the population? That doesn't make sense, does it? Just from a strategy perspective, it doesn't make any sense. It would be like me saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to start a whole movement, and the movement is going to be on, I don't know, cancer. I'm going to fight cancer. I'm going to fight heart disease, right? And I say, this is what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to fight these things. And then I just decide suddenly that I'm going to focus on the most, like, I don't know, this is a terrible analogy, but you'll get what I'm saying. Like vending machines, people who die from vending machines falling on them, which surprisingly is more than you'd think a year in America, because they shake them because they want their damn soda, right? Does that make sense? That I would make a case for healthcare and then focus on the most marginal experiences and expect that that's going to translate and make sense. I am of course believing in trans rights. That's not in question. It's our approach and how we think about them. Women's rights fold in trans rights. Trans rights don't fold in women. And the more that we play this game of outrage and I'm special, but not special enough that, you guys should be blaming me for things. We're getting played so bad. Let's pull up the women's stuff.
To clear up one of the many theories about you, I have no idea what the answer is, and you haven't got to answer. But are you actually attracted to women?
I am attracted to women.
You're not gay?
No. But I will say that women are very difficult to be around.
Okay.
So there's that.
And do you think they should have the right to vote?
I do not. No, absolutely not.
They should stay at home?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So basically, you're just a misogynist old dinosaur, aren't you? For a young guy. Yeah. I mean, I know I'm the boomer. I know I'm the boomer here, but actually, you're a 27-year-old dinosaur, aren't you? Aren't you, Nick Fuentes? All women. I am. All women are annoying. All women grow old. They all get fat. Says the guy. Have you ever had sex?
No, absolutely not.
Wow. Says the guy who's never got laid.
I said to save that for you. So I'm so glad we started with that one, okay? Because there's a longer one where he goes in more on the women, and I'm going to use that to demonstrate our debate strategy. But are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Okay. I do want to say something that's twofold. And I know I'm like usually not the guy, but I just want to say this is the second time that Nick Fuentes has been referred to as gay, right? Tucker Carlson said that he was. And actually, that teed up Nick Fuentes to have one of the most viral moments of his career, right? When he said that. So Tucker Carlson says that Nick Fuentes is he's, what is he, some gay little Mexican kid in the basement? And then, Nick goes on some tirade and is just like, I'm who you claim to represent, and talks about himself as like, as the masses, right? And people found that really moving. But the thing that gets me, right, isn't it interesting that they keep trying to like, I'm really not that guy, but I do think it's interesting. I'm like, this is like really weird old school homophobia, which is like, you're weird, you're small, you're a bit of a fruit, right? And I'll say this, I will say this. If just objectively speaking, right? I don't love the whole Nick Fuentes is gay because he's weird and small, right? Granted, he does look like he's got more semen in him than a hot tub in Provincetown. But that could also be because he's never had sex. So, either way, what matters more than whether or not he's gay is the fact that he's a fucking loser. Do you know how much misogyny exists in gay male communities? Do you know what I mean? Like, I do think it's interesting that like old school homophobia has come back on the guy who like thinks that gays will burn in hell. But that's it. It's all just a massive contradictions because he is, if you hate women like that, find them grotesque or whatever, you are a little gay. But what's fascinating, what you're going to hear is how much he talks about being a Catholic and a believer in scripture, which feels a little odd, I don't know, at odds with other things that he said. Why don't we pull up that other clip? But, oh boy, fucking virgin, a little mad virgin, shocking.
I mean, do you accept you are a white supremacist?
No, absolutely not.
You don't think white people are superior to black people?
No, I'm a Christian, so I believe everybody is equal before God.
Including women?
Yes.
So you give women equal rights then?
No.
Great.
No.
Great. Okay. So you just talked a lot of bullshit, didn't you?
No. Why are you like mad about this? No.
You want women to be treated equally before God, but you don't want to give them equal rights.
Yeah, because women and men are different.
Look,
do you believe there are two genders?
It's your view.
Do you think there's two genders?
I do think there are two genders, yes.
Okay. And so you mean there's distinction. There are two distinct genders.
I think we should all have the same rights to...
Well, if they're meaningfully distinct, biologically distinct, and they have different social and biological roles, I think it would follow that we would treat them a little bit differently in the law.
Wait, pause. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? Like, what are you talking about? Because there are differences of biology, you would have different legal precedents? What are you talking about? What? Okay. This is the problem, okay? What's happened here? Right? What's happened here? To us, we might be saying, well, yeah, we're hearing how stupid he is, but that's because you read, babies. That's because you're literate. That's because you might think about things occasionally, right? That's not the people who are on the internet. I want to be really clear about what I mean when I say make them explain it to you, right? It's not asking them more questions about what they believe. That's actually ideal, right? One of the clips that we've played off of Piers Morgan, because it was on his show, got 2 million hits in 12 hours, right? And so it's just going to go higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. There's a subset of people that want to hear that need to hear that. And this is what I mean. Why offer a platform to gotcha, right? You ask questions. Okay, but yeah, this and that. And I get it. This is a better example of trying to expose the contradictions, but it's not working because it relies on not only the gotcha, but the person having to capitulate ground or concede ground or a point. That's not happened here. It happened with the father, right? It happened with the father. Because that was not only because it was personal, but because he would have to own that story, own is that he said, I can't, he's not here. He can't defend himself. That's all we do is talk about people who aren't here. What are you talking about? That's the entire internet, right? If we keep doing this instead of really owning it, okay, if men and women, this and that, and you're promoting this, how would you do it? Like organize it, like show, like really break it down. Show me how it's done. I'm going to tell you something, okay? Let me play the whole clip out, and then I'm going to give you an example of a man. I'm getting excited, and I was like, no, I want you to hear it because then you'll know what I'm saying. Okay, I'll shush. I'm sorry. I'm so excited. I just want to fight so bad. And the time is coming, right? I'm getting the emails, babies. The things are moving, but I gotta let the new year ring it in. Anyway, let's hear the rest of the clip.
Teachings reflect that?
I do. Yeah, there's no female priests. Have you ever seen that?
Do you think that the Catholic Church thinks all women should be deprived of the vote?
Yeah, I think so.
No, they don't.
I think they do, yeah.
You think the Catholic Church position is women shouldn't be allowed to vote?
I think so, yeah,
No.
but I'm not positive.
No, it's bullshit.
Oh, it should be.
It should be. So if you were Pope, that's what you do. You could be Pope because you're celibate.
That's true. And I'm also from Chicago, like the Pope. But look,
Right.
I mean, women, it says in the Bible that women have no authority over men and they can't teach men. And that's why there's no female priests.
So there's a lot of
So I
things in
don't
the
think
Bible.
the Catholic-
I mean, do you take every
Okay.
word of the Bible as sacrosanct?
Well, yeah, it's inspired scripture.
That's all of
But
it.
I mean,
is
is this now
all of it is
a
sacrosanct.
theological debate? Well, it is Catholic doctrine that women should not lead and teach. I mean, you're not interacting with what I'm saying. Why can't women be priests?
Pause. Let's this is the part that I was waiting for because a lot of it is just nonsense. After that, they just go back and forth. The good part will tampons come up, so I'll let that. We'll let that. Okay, right there, right. He made this assertion that men are more natural leaders, but what's happening is Piers Morgan is, showing the preposterousness, right? Oh, so you don't think women should have rights? Okay, so women shouldn't have rights. So you think it's bad that women have rights? That's the line of questioning. That is actually not useful or strategic, right? If it was done a little better, it probably would have been trying to make a case for the fact that women are good leaders. And that's where, or women are leaders. And this is where we tend to find ourselves, right? I want us to pay attention to this because there are several strategies that can be played here. And all of them are better than this, okay? What ends up happening with us is that somebody says something, and I'm talking about us as in the left, right? If we get past the gotcha, do you realize that we have to spend a lot of time proving? And we do sound like we're lecturing oftentimes, right? Because when somebody is asserting something that you know is simply not true, right? You want to correct it, but more than that, we're not recognizing the strategy that's being used on us. I'm going to give you a couple examples, okay? Then we're going to go back to what could have happened here. Because I really need us to locate this, okay? When somebody makes a racist assertion, right? Nick Fuentes has made several, his dad made several, and he'll make a couple more, but more than a few were made on the Morgan show. And honestly, it's all over the internet. What ends up happening is that we then have to prove that racism exists. So let me give you an example, okay? I remember when I was in university, I wasn't really well versed in social justice rhetoric. I didn't know that term existed until maybe a year or a year and a half after these moments that I'm about to explain. And in these moments, okay, two things happened to me in around the same time, both having to do with race. I was just learning that, racism was systemic and sort of existed, but it wasn't really the point of these, these classes I'm in, but it gave me language to help me understand some of the things that I'd gone through. And I had a really hard time at university that first time because I didn't feel like I belonged. I can't even give a proper assessment of it because I was so detached from, my body and myself. It surprised me that, that professors thought I was, smart or intelligent because I just fled. I was just like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. I'm going to go play basketball. I lived at Tate, it's a York U reference. You don't need that. The first time something happened to me, literally the very first time, was when I first opened my mouth, right? I'm just learning this stuff, and I'm like, great, I want to participate. We had a philosophy class, and in that philosophy class, the prompt was whether or not education should be, just a universal good, right? Something that everyone should have access to. It could be free and all these other things. So this is in my, the TA was running the class, and it was a prompt, and people were making a case for and a case against, and I was really nervous because I couldn't make eye contact with people, and I really couldn't talk to strangers, and I was trying to grow. So I say, something I think is something that is very generic and universally acknowledged, right? I say, and it's taken everything in me to say, I'm just like, whew, I say something really relaxed. Like, I think removing these economic barriers are really important, because these, fuck me. Corey, can we just, I just need to say that part more effectively. I hope I'm not being too annoying. Okay. So the prompt was around whether or not education should be a universal good. I believed that it should be. A lot of people did. But I wanted to couch it in something that felt consistent with what I was learning. And what I was learning was that, wow, it wasn't just me. There's a reason why I look around campus, and it's, it's PWI. So knowing that, I'm not shocked by that. I'm not upset about it, but I know how hard it was to get me there. It took miracles to get me to university. I had guidance counselors who paid for my applications, right? The whole thing was just an absolute fluke, and a village of people, some who did harm, some who didn't, but all who are part of that story. So, there's some skin in the game for me when I say, if we remove these, costs and make education a universal good, it would address some of the barriers, like having fewer Black people on campus because of economic and racial disenfranchisement. I was in my head, I was like, oh, okay, I said it. Like, that was a hard sentence to say. And without missing a beat, this white girl in my class goes, well, you're here, aren't you? And I didn't know what to say, right? Because in that moment, everything that I had been through, everyone that had helped me, it all came crashing into the front of my head. And then I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Use my whole self, my story, everything I know to paint a picture for you about how hard this is? But that's just it. She wasn't right, by the way. Like, she's not the right. That bitch was just defensive as fuck for no reason, right? But it made me go home and think about 3 different ways, because I don't like to lose. 3 different ways I could have responded, because you have to practice. I didn't know what to say without bleeding on the fucking page, right? And that's how a lot of us, that's what it means to be a fully realized person. I paused because I was like, was I fully realized? But you get what I'm saying, right? A person who is in the process of being fully realized, right? Self-actualization or whatever the fuck. So I wrote some one-liners down, and it wasn't the first time that it happened, right? It's around the same time. We're in a class, all this stuff comes up, and believe it or not, I was not a big yapper in these things. I was basically like a little ghost, right? But I'm like, let me just try. Every now and again, I'd stick my head out, and I started to do more of it as the years went on. But these are the earlier years. So this guy, I say something to the effect of police brutality, right? And how it disproportionately affects Black people. This guy, without missing a beat, what about Black on Black crime? Take a moment and think about the fact that it's actually the exact same thing that puts me in the exact same place. I have to prove to you, right, that racism exists. I have to prove that it's harder for someone who looks like me to get into a university, right? Meanwhile, we know that if you're fucking poor, it's near goddamn impossible to make that make sense, let alone all the other things, all the other identities that make it a fucking challenge, right? All the history. And this is where we get stuck. We get stuck. The reason why Piers isn't doing that is because he's never had to do it. That's the left. We've had to do it. And we get caught in this all the time. You see it on Jubilee. You see it in this debate and that debate. Piers doesn't have to do it, but he's not doing the other thing either, which I'm about to explain, right? He's not interested in what? Piers Morgan does not have a vested interest in us winning. And that's fine. That's not his prerogative. I do. So my job is to always keep writing notes about how. So rather than prove that racism exists, right? Rather than prove that it exists, which is what we're forced to do, make them own their bigotry, right? Now, Nick doesn't have a problem saying, oh, I'm a racist. Yeah, I'm a racist, whatever, but really make them get so specific. That's actually the key to making really funny jokes, right? The specificity, right? The specificity is what makes it funny. The specificity is what shows and demonstrates the lies. So what do I mean? Rather than me saying, actually black on black crime is a racial myth, whatever. That person's already like smug as fuck as one, because that's the line that everybody remembers. Everybody remembers black on black crime, right? Everybody remembers men are natural leaders, right? But what if I don't participate? What if I say, and not the case with Fuentes, because again, there's no gotcha with him. But again, with regular people, I'm talking about this example, and I'm going to go to Nick. With regular people, I don't need to say, racism exists, and you're this, and no. All I have to say is, wait, do you not believe black people are worth protecting? What? No, I'm not saying that. Because that's what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter what it is, so much as it puts the person on the defensive. They put you on the defensive. You put them right the fuck back there. You don't concede. You don't owe anybody an explanation about something that is a universal fucking fact. Whether or not people acknowledge it is a testament to society and their dumbass. But we keep getting put in these positions where it's like, no, I have to prove that this thing happens, because it's called derailment, right? After that bird hit me with well, you're here, aren't you? Right. I went home and I've made that list of things I would say, but it eventually evolved into what you've heard me yap about before, which is the 5 strategies, right? That people often use to derail the points that you're trying to make. Derailment, minimization, reduction, tokenism, and hurt, right? Derailment. What about black on black crime? Right? Reduction is a version of, it's not like Jews were the only people impacted by a Holocaust, right? Minimization, why are you so serious? Why can't you take a joke? Tokenism, my personal favorite. Nick uses that here. Black people love me. Black people love my show, right? Which he actually did say. Or my personal favorite. I just feel really unsafe having this conversation right now. I feel really unsafe. It's always some stupid version of this. Now, what I appreciate about this moment is because we're dealing with a troll, right? The troll feeds off of the outrage. The troll feeds off of you're hearing Piers Morgan just, talk on and on and on, pepper him with questions. Well, that lends to a kind of self-importance, doesn't it? Right? Hey, and not for Piers, it's a power dynamic. Sure, you're on Piers's platform, but you've got this guy sitting smug, and he's like, remember that the optics are just as important when it comes to debate, right? Who looks frazzled? Now, for the record, Piers is he doesn't look frazzled or anything like that, but he's asking the same questions over and over and over again, and it's not progressing because Nick is not embarrassed, not ashamed. So a strategy that could have been used here, because he's a troll, is the embrace, right? Which is one that I didn't account for in in university. I didn't account for because this is an entirely different place that we're in. So I was quite pleased when I thought, okay, what would I do here, right? Talks about men being natural leaders. If it wasn't Piers Morgan and it was one of us, we'd probably be like, women are natural leaders, and misogyny and da, right? We have to prove that misogyny is bad. Why? It is bad. Why do you have to prove it to somebody who doesn't care? But you do have a responsibility when you're online. Don't let them get away with fucking anything. Don't let them get ground. The way to make sure is to get them talking, to make them talk so fucking much, right? Or be so much better informed than them that the contradictions, right? These lazy, conclusive, definitive statements. Well, that's what the Bible says, which is just what every boring homophobe has named, right? Well, that's what the Bible said. Piers plays it a little bit, but that's not even a good argument. I'm interested in things like this, right? Men are natural leaders. Okay, great. He says that. Rather than attack that worldview, absorb it. That's a strategy I'd like to see more, right? Absorb it. Men are natural leaders. That's something that Tucker Carlson says. That's something that, Fuentes believes. That's something that most men, especially those in the GOP and those on the right, as Marjorie Taylor Greene, et cetera, are finding out, believe that, right? Most would believe that. It's what the Bible says. It's natural leaders. Okay, great, right? Men are natural leaders. That is an absolute statement, right? So then you might ask a question like, and you'd say this has been true historically versus, so what Piers Morgan did was, so women can't. So you're saying this about women. No. So men are natural leaders. That is a fact to you. That is an absolute fact. Yes. That is true. Okay. And you'd say that would you say that this has been true historically? When you ask that, right? It's a misdirect. I'm now purposefully misdirecting someone. They're going to think that my position is actually to say, what about Joan of Arc or some bullshit? I don't know, right? That I'm going to poke holes in an idea that men have been leaders in the West historically. That's perfect. So what the natural response is to double down, right? Yes, of course, men have been. That's why we've seen Western society as it is. That's why men. It's always been men, right? Great, they double down. That's what you want. Then you might start listing some of the things, right? They're not working. State of the country, the fact that people are starving, etc. Right? Then what happens, right? The logical response for anyone who has doubled down is to amend. Not abandon, but amend, which is exactly what we want. The amendment will look like, obviously there's going to be some good leaders and then, and then there's going to be people not fit for it or not. So not all men are natural leaders. That is not participating in feeding the beast. That is forcing concessions and poking holes in these logical fallacies, in these blanket statements, right? There's a number of ways to play this, but this is much more interesting to me than gotcha, because that doesn't work. It also takes the burden of proof off of us. Why that overcommitment was important, right? So you'd say that this has been true historically, right? Is because I want to be clear when I start listing the things that suck, you know what I mean? Why can't Americans afford this? Da, 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 da. You have already said that men were the leaders during all of these things that happened. So that part is moot. And more than that, you can actually get a greater commitment. It's white men. They're going to want to shift to all the things that are amazing and da, 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 da. But they start talking like that. They've already lost it. I'm more interested in that. We don't have to constantly lecture, be outraged, whine, prove. I think that's partly why. I'm going to just keep it a buck. I don't really, at least the folks I know and the folks online, et cetera, it's why I think Black folks don't feel compelled to constantly be like, racism is real because y'all never cared anyway. You know what I mean? Like America, the West, et cetera. It's not like we've said it and we have irrefutable proof. That doesn't mean that that's something that's accepted. And so there's an acknowledgement, right? There's an acknowledgement that participating in this way is actually a part of the ruse. Toni Morrison talks about racism's primary objective is of distraction. Are we being played? That's what we need to know. You don't need to hear the rest. It's a little bit funny. It's like, ew, tampons, never, gross. I don't even know. That part is actually hilarious because he sounds like a dweeb. Sounds like an absolute dweeb. Why don't we play the last one then? Gotta love hearing about the blacks. I love hearing about the blacks.
I'm a new generation of white person. I'm not living around blacks. Sorry. You know, I want white kids, and I don't want my white kids bringing home black people to marry. It's racial for me. And call me racist. Oh, very Christian of you. I don't give a fuck.
So that was a clip that they played from Fuentes' show.
Clearer, really. Unless you want to say that's another of your jokes, but you're basically saying, yeah, I'm a racist, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
You're fine with saying you're a racist?
Totally. I think everybody's racist. I think everybody, if we're being honest, is racist.
Pause right there. Yes. Do you see? Do you get what I mean though? How many liberals do we fucking know? All the whites, right? Who make up the majority of the left would say, yeah, I'm still like, yeah, I'm racist. And how many times have people of color on the left tried to shame and fucking use identity as a bludgeon, right? To say, you're racist. So, like, the fact is that our fear and our fucking line stepping and our cowardice around actually addressing real things, just saying plain, has created conditions for somebody like this bottom feeder to thrive. We're about the same size, right? I'm like, I would love to see us fight. I want to fight. But my point is, he said something, right, around race is still the most taboo subject. You notice that there's still like a weird little lily-liveredness around the use of the word nigger, right? Maybe you winced at that, and you should, right? I don't like the sound of the ER. It freaks me the fuck out. But at the same time, right? Again, I'm in North Hollywood with my homegirl who's also black. Zoom, there goes a car. How much power am I going to give that and that person? The whole point was the absurdity makes me laugh because I'm like, I got to worry about this big picture shit. That's the point. You wanted to incite this thing. I'm going to use this in my bit. And it worked. It was funny, but not ha-ha funny. Funny because it's stupid and silly that these things happen in the first place. But for Nick to say, I think we're all a little racist, right? That is where we are actually getting beat out. And that is why he has credibility to an extent for saying, I'm a truth teller. Because at the end of the day, it might be his truth. He certainly isn't worried about facts, statistics, data, history. It's all very much skewed to bend, in pseudo-intellectualism, pseudoscience, right? They love that over there. That's the danger of Nick Fuentes, though, because he's simply unafraid. And to be perfectly honest, that is why, similar to the argument I made about trans comedians needing to tell jokes to get better, I can't mince. I have to say, and you have to say, we have to demonstrate what free speech actually is and looks like, not in the way that we know it to be true, which is the only way that, in the real world, which is, it comes to protecting people's right to protest, etc., but also understanding the internet, which has become a universe unto itself and something that has absolutely shaped the American consciousness. And because of accelerationism, we know how effective it's been. What would change if we started to stop being so fucking morally outraged all the time and start actually trying to figure some stuff out. That's what we need to be doing next year. That's what Dark Woke will be doing next year. And I'm not talking about down the line. I mean, we need to be demonstrating this, and you can't talk about free speech if you don't model it. And again, we're not talking about the real free speech. We're talking about whatever the fuck, but it's what gives this people credibility. If we stop feeding them, we stop using outrage, and then we start talking about the things that they've capitalized on our cowardice and our silence. They've got nothing except a bunch of fucking losers who are too unlikable to get laid. Okay. Actually, you know what? That was what I wanted from that. I'm going to leave us with this. There's one last clip I want you to hear. This is another way of how to beat these kinds of arguments or trolls. This is Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is one of the dumbest people on the Daily Wire, but he was highly effective in going after the trans community because he capitalized on something I identified was a fucking problem all the way back in 2018, which was, oh no, we don't actually know. I know that we couldn't talk about shit about trans people and trans women in particular because there was some biracial trans girl running around terrorizing the queer community as a roommate in fucking Los Angeles, and nobody was saying shit. So she just kept going from house to house to house, and everybody just kept taking her ass in because nobody wanted to be called transphobic. And she was black, so they were afraid of that too. So here's this awful fucking person ruining everybody's lives, and nobody's saying shit. And I was like, I'm just joking. That was obviously part, but there was way more. It was the whole Chimamanda thing. It was all happening, and I was like, shit. If we don't get in front of this and talk about what womanhood is in the 21st century, we're going to get railroaded down the line, and we did. Trans women are women, but we just didn't make an argument. So what you're going to see, and then, because I've already made the case, I'm going to just, after this clip, I'm just going to say, love ya, and whatever. Once I point out the thingies, but what you'll hear is another way, right? So one is the absorption of the argument, but the other is the actual nuts and bolts. So Matt Walsh, right? I'm holding back some words, right? So Matt Walsh puts out this thing, African asylum seekers, air quotes, right? He tweets, African asylum seekers should seek asylum in another African country. Arab asylum seekers should seek asylum in an Arab country. Asian asylum seekers should seek asylum in an Asian country. Why the hell is it our job to provide asylum to misfits and outcasts from other continents? Let them find asylum in a country with a similar, whatever. This was Matt Walsh talking to Ryan Grimm and Emily from Dropsite News. I like Dropsite. They don't have the Riz necessary, but definitely very, very important allies. When I say the Riz necessary, I just mean for the internet. But 100% handled this shit. And honestly, maybe I just need to widen my aperture of what Riz is. It's a little fuzzy in the beginning. But lock in after the first 10 seconds, because then he starts to scaffold the argument, right? So again, why are we letting people in America, right? Why are we letting people in America? They should go seek asylum where they live. Great. Let's actually execute your plan. Except there's some holes in it.
Look at Haiti. What part of Haiti are you saying to yourself, we need more of that?
Beaches.
Well, we have more beaches than them too, right? Don't we?
Right.
We're a much bigger country.
We don't want a marine invasion and occupation of the United States that constantly decapitates governments and takes the money out of the country and saddles us with
we don't want the Clintons
debt
either.
from a revolution. Yeah.
Right. Although I don't. So you're saying that
we wouldn't want to be like basically a colony that the entire West spends 200 years punishing.
Forget it. There's so much Riz.
After the Haitian Revolution.
I get that. I understand that, but also at a certain
we
point,
wouldn't want that. No, yes.
We wouldn't want that, but I would also say that that's not entirely why Haiti's in the position that it's in. I mean, at a certain
this is
point,
pause. Right there, right? Yeah, no, of course. But I would say, yeah, that's pretty much entirely why Haiti's in the position that it's in. But did you see how he had to concede? And what you'll see is, for once, somebody else being the fucking concession stand which is what we have been for the racists since slavery was abolished. It continues on.
As a country, you have to stand on your own 2 feet and take care of yourself. And
but at what point is that? They elect Aristide, and we overthrow Aristide. Then they elect Jovenel Moïse. Jovenel Moïse is assassinated a bunch of people with American connections, and then we install in 2021, like the United States installed the prime minister that we just ousted. Like, so we could say, okay, yeah, you got to get over the 200 years ago, but like we're still doing it.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not in favor of. I'm very non-interventionist in my policies, so I'm not in favor of most of the things that we're doing in other countries.
We just made new government in Haiti, in a hotel room in Jamaica, and then we insisted that whatever government we made in Jamaica had to allow Kenyan troops to come in under the flag of the UN in order to go to war with the gangs.
Yeah, I'm not. Look, I'm not interested in. Right. If it were up to me, I'm not interested in doing anything in Haiti. Like let Haiti be Haiti and take care of that. That's sort of my whole point here. Let them take care of themselves and their own problems. I'm also not saying that there's like never a scenario where we let someone from Haiti into the country.
Right. Do you get what I mean now? Once we move past this need to shame and outrage, and I'm going to say something, it is anecdotal, but I have observed it enough, and part of my job is to understand, the human condition and what motivates and drives people. I think we need to be more honest as leftists that a lot of the outrage and the is less about putting that person in their place, right? Or like correcting their worldview or whatever, and more about, I'm a good person. This is how good of a person I am, right? There's more of that, and I don't know how to classify that except for annoying. It might be a part of virtue signaling, but it's something I've observed over and over and over again, and it's become incredibly detrimental to movement culture, right? I score points by taking you down because inevitably it's not what happens when the right's not around. Most lefties, certainly true of queers, etc., are not around a bunch of random, regular, straight people, or definitely not MAGA people. So where do you think that practice goes? Oh, right. That's when we kick the shit out of each other and start fucking running people out of the community or calling people out or whatever, canceling people, whatever the fuck. That's where that comes from. It's what happens when a collective is like, see how good I am, see how much I care. Is that caring? Is it? It's not about what you believe, it's about the results, So I'm really interested in new ways of approaching this, and I'm evolving. There's a whole gender thing that I'm working on. Because the way that it's being talked about is too fucking annoying to me. But the second that we move past the outrage, there's not much there because they've been living in that place and they don't generate ideas. That's why they call themselves traditionalists. That's why they need us. We are the artists. We're the writers. We're the thinkers. We're the painters and the musicians and the poets and the authors and the teachers. That's why they attack all of these things that make life worth living, that give meaning to being alive. If we move past the outrage, if we move past our need to virtue signal all the time, all that's left is a fucking anemic dweeb because they're no longer feeding off of our goddamn energy. All they do is say, this isn't real, or this is my worldview, and then we operate from that. All they do is take our language, our words, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion, woke, right? Identity politics, critical race theory. I'm like, how the fuck did you even get that one? That's only in law schools. And you nignogs don't understand laws. Once we stop with our annoying nonsense, they're done. There's nothing there. It's smoke and fucking mirrors, right? But the problem is we like looking at ourselves too much. And again, I know that there's a whole power structure, but my job isn't to look at what the right is doing and talk only about that. It's how we're participating in it and how easily, Corey and I were talking when we were yapping and, I mentioned these things and he was like, wait, I'm upset. I'm upset. And and he was like, damn, we getting, and it's like, yeah, we are so easy to exploit. We're so easy to exploit. Say, all I got to do is, I don't care about a pronoun. And I guarantee you, I can tell you what the reaction is going to be and how it's going to flow. Right? Racism. Oh, Jesus. Our folks don't want to talk about it anyway. So we might as well. We might as fucking well. We might as well own the racism conversation. Don't you think we should? So what is the conversation beyond, that's bad? You can't say that. Maybe if we got past that, we get to the other side where we talk good shit. Anyway, that's just me. This was a harder one to do, so I hope that some of the things make sense. I'm adjusting for a troll. I never had to because all I did was mock them. And honestly, it's really, really healthy. You should do it occasionally. It's great, right? I'm not like, yeah, I'm like, you guys used to be so much better. I miss 90s racism, what? Anyway, but the mockery is what we go to. And it's true. We need to make fun of the losers more, but only if our side of the street is fucking clean. And right now we could be doing so much better, but it's because we let our own losers run the show. So we're done with that. That's it. It's dark woke, baby. Take our shit back. The second that we do, there's nothing they can do about it because it's our shit. The right-wing propaganda machine takes identity politics, puts it through and then shoves it right back out. And then liberals are juggling that version of identity politics. I like identity politics, but we've become identitarian on the left. We become fully fucking identitarian. And for the record, they always were that on the right. Right? Always. But as we mentioned, plurality, we need that on our side in a lot of different ways. We need it from an electoral analysis, right? We also need it to demonstrate comprehension, and we need it amongst each other. So hopefully all the threads are coming together, but this was really annoying, but I think useful as, just practice. Anyway, I love you all very much. I do think that I could destroy that Muppet. I genuinely do. I think so. I could do it. Last thing I'm going to say. The only reason that the media and mainstream media is giving this guy any play at all is because we're the ones getting played. We make him relevant. Okay, I love you guys. And I can't wait to hit you with another banger. We'll keep it light tomorrow. Keep it light and tight. Shout out to Corey for making us look good, sound good. And shout out to you, the listeners that just make this show worth doing. I love y'all very much. Don't forget to make your shit. Don't just consume content, create it. Okay, love you. See you tomorrow.